The story I'm about to tell you is something that I can't stop thinking about. Have you ever discovered something so shocking that it completely altered the way you view the world? Like you've gone about your life in one way, then boom, something happens and suddenly nothing is the same anymore. And you start to question who you are and how you became this way. Well, I had no idea that one particular winter's night would turn into such a life-changing moment for me. I had been over at my friend Casey's watching movies, and I'd planned to stay over and just head back to my parents' place the next day. They're normally pretty chill about stuff like that, but for some reason, my dad called me around 8 p.m. and asked me to come home. He didn't want me driving in the dark, as there'd been some attacks in our area that were freaking everyone out. I was bummed about leaving, but come summertime, I'd be off to college, and I wouldn't need to tell anyone what time I'd be home at. Bring it on, I thought. By the time I said goodbye and gathered up my stuff, it was already getting dark. I decided to take the quick route home, as I could see my gas was dangerously low. I'm sure you can guess what happened next. I made it about 5 miles out of town when my car just slid to a halt, and of course it happened to be in the middle of nowhere. Casey's place was like 10 miles from my place, and here I was, stuck smack bang in the middle. There was no chance I was going to walk back to Casey's. I mean, I couldn't just abandon my car like that. I knew there was a gas station like 3 miles away, near my house. Maybe I could run there and back? Who was I kidding? I'd just call my dad. He'd bring some gas, and we'd be good to go. I took my phone out of my bag and could not believe it. This seriously felt like one of those cliched horror movies. Girl runs out of gas in the middle of nowhere. Girl realizes it's getting dark. Girl discovers her phone battery is completely and utterly dead. How had my car and phone gone dead in the same moment? This was bad. Oh, this was really bad. There was nothing else for it. I'd need to sleep in my car, or face up to my fears of entering a dark forest alone at night and go find someone who might be able to help. I doubted anyone lived in this wasteland of an area, but still I had to go check. As I walked through the trees, I realized exactly where I was. This was where one of the attacks had happened. It'd been in the newspaper all week, and there were even some police warning tape on some of the trees. What was I doing here? I was literally walking into a death trap. Just my luck. The next moment, it started to snow. I'd completely forgotten there was a heavy snowfall coming. Great! At this rate, my car would be buried under snow before I even got back. This was turning out to be a nightmare of a night. And I couldn't even Instagram story it all because my freaking phone was dead. Typical. I was getting ready to give up and succumb to the fact that I need to sleep in my car, when suddenly I spotted some kind of light in the distance. As I got closer, I realized it was actually a fire. Oh my gosh. As if tonight couldn't get worse. Was I about to stumble upon a fire when my car burned down? No, this couldn't be happening to me. Then I realized it was just a little bonfire, but it was freakishly close to the hut next to it. I approached with caution and plucked up every morsel of courage in my body as I knocked on the door. My heart was thumping in my chest as I heard footsteps approach. Who even lived in a place like this? It was basically a glorified shack. My dad's garden shed was bigger than this. As the door opened, I felt like running away. Standing in the doorway was this huge guy. He just stared at me. I don't know who was more shocked, me or him. I couldn't scream. I couldn't run. I just froze. His beard was so long, and it honestly looked and smelled like he hadn't had a shower in ever, actually. My hands started to go clammy, like when I get nervous, and all I could think about was how much my parents would kill me for walking into a trap like this. I might be 18, but I still know when I shouldn't be talking to strangers, and this was definitely one of those occasions. He invited me in, and I really didn't want to enter, but I didn't feel like I had a choice. What if he chased me if I ran away? So I sucked up my fear and followed him inside. You won't believe what was in there. Or rather, I should say, who was in there. Sitting around the fire, there were about 20 people, and they all looked really freaky, almost like they were in a trance or something. Firstly, I couldn't believe they had an actual fire in the middle of the room, and secondly, who were these people? I mean, they all looked kind of similar, so I guess they were related or something. Had I gate crashed a family gathering? Or were they calling in the ancestors or something? Seriously, it was so weird. The man who'd opened the door invited me to join them around the fire, and as I walked towards an empty spot in the corner, all eyes were on me. I felt so out of place. All I wanted was some gas. I turned to the man with the beard and stuttered, no, it's okay. I don't want to intrude. I just need some help with my car. You see, I ran out of gas and I really need to get home. And now my phone's dead and—" I stopped. The man was laughing. He didn't even care. He then said, "Don't worry, we'll help you. But first, come sit. Come get warm. You won't be going anywhere tonight." What did he mean I wouldn't be going anywhere tonight? I had to get home. I had no idea what the time was, but I knew my parents would be freaking out around about now. I went to check the time on my phone, and then remembered it was dead. Now what? Did this place not even have a clock? I stood up to leave, but the man with the beard stopped me and said I needed to eat first. That's when I noticed the huge pot on the fire. How had I missed it? It was like a big cauldron. He served me up a bowl of what looked like a mystery stew, and I said thanks. There was no way I was eating this. I'd probably die of food poisoning. But as everyone else started eating and slurping in acknowledgement of how delicious it was, I decided to try it. Otherwise, they'd just think I was some rude girl. And you know what? It wasn't half bad. In fact, it was pretty incredible. And they just cooked this on an open fire? Wow. I usually just heated up my food in the microwave, other than s'mores and the occasional BBQ. We literally never used fire to cook. Maybe they were onto something here. After eating, I politely said thank you and then excused myself, but they wouldn't let me leave. They said I could leave in the morning, only once the snow stopped, otherwise I'd get sick. They even made me up a little bed in the corner by the fire, so I wouldn't get cold. They were being weirdly kind to me. I asked them where the toilet was, and said sorry, I just really had to go. The guy with the beard showed me where it was, and I was so grateful when it was an actual toilet. I guess I'd been expecting a hole in the ground outside or something. I couldn't wait to tell the girls at school about this. If I ever left this place alive, that was. I came back from the toilet, and luckily the tea was nowhere to be seen. But now everyone was singing, and as I went back to join them, I realized this was actually kind of nice. I hadn't sung with people in years. I felt like I was back at summer camp. Honestly, these people were bonkers. Get a TV, people! Although as I thought this, I also had this other feeling wash over me. I felt cozy. If they killed me in the night, at least my last meal had been a good one. Finally, everyone left and headed to bed, and I lay there thinking, could this night get any stranger? I woke up in the night and had no idea where I was. I was shivering, and the fire had gone out. I reached out for my phone out of habit, and remembered it had died, but then I decided to check anyway. To my surprise, it had turned on. It was on 4%, but I figured I could call my parents at least. I had 27 missed calls. Oh no, it was 2 a.m. and they'd probably already called the police by now, especially with all these attacks that had been going on. My mom answered after one ring, and she sounded terrible. She demanded to know where I was and why hadn't I called her. I told her I was fine, and that I was staying at a random family's house by the forest. I was whispering as I said this, because the old man was asleep on the other side of the room. I didn't want to wake him. Of course, my mom started screaming and said they were coming over right now. I panicked. My parents were furious. I tried to sneak out as quietly as possible and decided I'd just wait for them back in my car. But they were already outside before I even made it to the forest. They were driving so fast I thought they'd drive right into the house. My mom jumped out and ran towards me, and my dad was just shouting, "Tilly, you get in this car right now. You are in deep trouble, my girl." And then it got worse. I heard police sirens. My mom was hysterical, saying what was this place, and that she thought I'd been kidnapped by these bad people, and that I knew not to come to this area. I just stared at her in disbelief. She was being so judgmental. She didn't even know these people. I wanted to tell her that, but now the cops were walking toward us, and the man with the beard was standing in the doorway, looking crestfallen. "I'm sorry," I whispered, hoping that he would hear me. I was suddenly so embarrassed. My parents had made such a scene, and now the cops would probably arrest all of these people, who were actually so kind. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that their life was pretty nice. I told the cops I was fine. My car had just run out of gas, and we could go home. There were no problems, but they still went to investigate. My parents told me to get in the car, and I did, but suddenly I stopped. "Wait," I said. Then I ran back towards the house and said to the man with the beard, "Thank you so much. I'm Tilly, by the way, and honestly, I'm so grateful. You guys are, well, you're pretty cool. I'm sorry if I acted a bit freaked out at first. I just didn't know what to expect." He reached out to my hand and shook it and said, "Please come back and visit us soon. You're a good singer, Tilly. Oh, I'm Kai, by the way." I wanted to shout at my parents about the way they acted back there, But I realized that I'd acted in exactly the same way at first. I judged them because they lived a little differently from me, and I was kind of ashamed of myself. I mean, I'd even considered that they might have been the attackers. The next day, we went back to get my car, and Kai and his brothers and sons helped us dig it out of the snow. When my dad saw how kind they were, he also came to the same realization. Even Ahanu smiled and waved at me, even though I hadn't shared his tea with him. I mean, I don't think I'm about to give up my phone anytime soon, or move to the forest, but I've become good friends with Kai and his family, and I go visit at least once a week now. They are such incredible people, and I was wrong to judge them. They might live simply, but they are way happier than a lot of people living in my town. And I love that they sit around the fire and tell stories and sing together. Sometimes we can surprise ourselves if we just open our minds a bit, don't you think? What did you think of my story? Please share your comments, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel.